So I have my database open, and I'm going to show one of my forms. So in design view, it looks like this, and I'm going to take a look at this control I have here, which is a list view. And in the form arrange section, we have this feature called anchoring, and I've specified that this should be top left aligned. And as I switch views, this gets expanded to the right to fill out my space. See, in design view, it's only this wide.
Yeah.
If you take a look at the control down here and look at its anchoring, it's also top left, which, oh, sorry, I have code in here somewhere that's actually resizing this. That's why I forgot that. I have code that resizes it to fit the window. But basically, you could do the same using these stretch features.
Yeah.
So you can say this, I want to stretch it across. I specified this bottom down here should stretch across, and if I go look at it now, that didn't work, probably because I have code on this.
Is that a sizable form you've got there, or is that a dialogue?
This form opens in tab, so it's not dialogue, it's the tab view that came with 2010. So it's always going to open and follow the application size around.
Yeah.
Let's see. I'm going to show another form. Basically, you want to play around with the anchoring feature. It can be used to stretch across. It used to be stretched down.
Yeah. I guess that was in there somewhere. I wasn't sure whether there was any other things. So the first point you mentioned about checking out your users' kind of normal resolutions and screen sizes is probably a good one, assuming you've got easy access to your users' information.
Yeah. The thing is, a lot of times, there's not going to be, if you want something more advanced, there's Peter's Shrinker Stretcher program, which is a bit of software that whenever the form is resized, it will try to resize all objects. But I'm not overly fond of it because if I have a big screen, I don't want to see all of the text boxes just be larger on the screen. I want to fit more items onto the screen.
Yeah, sure.
So I'm not too fond of the whole stretching thing, but give it a try. I believe he has a free trial. If you want to buy it, I think it's around $100 or $200. It's definitely a lot less than if you want to try to write it all yourself. But there might be cases where you have more simple requirements. So I'm going to look at one of my forms. So this is a form I have. I have my tree view over here on the left, which might be set to stretch down. But one of the other things I have is this gray bar right here, and I've coded it so that if I click it, sometimes it's hard to hit, I can use it.
Is that a splitter?
No, it's not a splitter, and it worked this morning. Oh, here we go. So I've set it up. It's just a box that I've added some code to that will resize my form a bit. So this just uses the fact that some people have a wider monitor and they want to see more of what is going on within the tree view itself. Sometimes they want to read all the text here.
Sure, yeah.
But if they have a small monitor, the control on the left is a tree view.
Yeah, the one you're actually moving around.
This is a subform, and if we go to design view of that form, and go look at the control here.
Oh, that's just a line, a box, okay.
It's a rectangle. I tried with a line, but it's extremely difficult to hit a line. So I made it a box separator, or a box, called it box separator. It's not very wide. Maybe I should have made it wider. If we go look at the events, I have events on double click, mouse down, mouse up, and mouse move. Because there's no built-in drag and drop for this.
Yeah.
So on the double click, I've set it up so it runs through a lot of things. I'm not going to go into details of the code. It's basically set up to either go all the way left to a minimum setting or all the way right to a maximum setting that the form will allow.
Yeah.
So that's just a double click feature. If we go look at the mouse down, basically I record the starting position. I set a variable that I've started a move. I record the starting X, and I record the starting position of my box. Then as I move the mouse, this is the event down here, says, okay, or as I move the mouse over the box, sorry. So move the mouse, I have this. If we don't have a move in progress, then exit the procedure. If X is equal to 0, this basically means I haven't actually moved the mouse. The mouse is back at X equals 0. And then this is the code that will either move it a bit to the left or a bit to the right. And I don't want to...
So the controls around it, yeah, like that.
Well, the only actual control I really need to adjust is preview control and where the subform starts. So I'm modifying this here, that's the preview control. I'm modifying its width, basically like this.
Yeah.
And the other part is I'm modifying the left property of this control, basically moving it to the right, moving it to the left. So that's
pretty much like a splitter in that respect, isn't it? It looks the same, even though it isn't.
That was my intention, try to get it to look like a splitter, yeah. You can see over here, if you look at the control here, that's a list view control. As I resize the form, the control resizes as well. Go in and look at the code here. Let's see, on resize, that's the event you want to use. On resize, I'll go through code comparing the window width to what's the left position of the list view, what's the width of the list view, add 0.5 centimeter for extra buffer if you want, and then I resize the list view, so on and so forth. There's a lot of things going on here. Again, I don't want to go into details with all of that. It does the same with the height of the list view. The reason it's actually doing anything with the height is if users have larger forms, I guess. Also because I originally wrote this code in 2003 before the anchoring feature was available.
Okay.
So there's a couple of options you can do, but they work best on big controls. Like if you have a text box bound to a memo field, that's a good way a good place to use the anchoring feature. If you have a subform that's a data sheet, that's also a great place to use it so that you can expand the data sheet to fit what you need. There's also a lot of cases where it doesn't make sense. If you have a date field, I mean, you don't want the text box containing your date to fill up the screen even if there's space for it. You want a date text box to fit the date and nothing more.
Yeah, I guess it's trial and error for this stuff quite a lot of the time, isn't it, as well?
Yeah, that's also the thing. There is no one-size-fits-all solution because, as I said, a text box with a date in it shouldn't really scale.
Yeah. It looks good. I should have a play with some of that.
So, next question I got was from a guy called Daru. He's sadly not here, but he asked if we take the latest version of Office 2010s, 2013. How is it possible to develop and integrate into your Access application custom controls? And if I was able to show an example. Well, what I can show is there's this guy, Jack Leach, he's also an MVP. And on his webpage, dimeng.com/browseembed, he actually has a bit of a video showing something he made in Access. He embedded a web browser control and set its address to be a JavaScript page. And the JavaScript he wrote himself. And he added events to the JavaScript so that when he clicks inside the web browser, it gets it uses callbacks to access code that's listening for that event. It's pretty neat. I don't fully understand all of it, but if you have something that can run in Java, you can actually make it work in Access through the web browser control, and you can do some pretty neat stuff. I mean, what he's doing here is pretty neat. He has interactive graphs. As you can see, as he clicks on the chart, there's stuff happening showing the Access values and stuff. I've been thinking about integrating some of this because I have some charts and they're not interactive. It would be cool if I could have the user click on the chart. Say you have a bar chart of this year's sales, this month's sales, stuff like that. And if the user clicks this month's sales, it would take him to a form showing the data for that month. That would be pretty cool, but I haven't gotten around to that yet. Something else is that you can make your own, you can customize the built-in controls, I would say. So this is another application of mine. I've customized the controls, the text box. I've added a code to the text box, not anything fancy or great. It's just if an edit is made, the text box changes its background color. And you can see as focus moves around, the label gets bolded and italicized. The text box itself gets a blue border, so it's easy for the user to see where he's at. I've added code that if you double-click a combo box, it'll switch to the next item in the list. For a long list, this might not make sense, but if you have something that's just yes or no fields, yes, no, nothing, it's pretty easy to just click through this as compared to having to manually click it or click it down, selecting yes, especially if it's just a combo box that has two options. Having to click it down to select the other option just is one more click than is needed. And I didn't do this for all of the text boxes. I did one class for text box and one class for the form to make all of this happen. Let's see. You can see I have some class modules down here. The thing is, you have to do a class module, one for text box, one for combo box, one for the checkbox, text box, that sort of stuff. So basically, sorry?
That's quite a lot of work to develop.
Well, you could say so, but as it's developed once, I can reuse it.
Yeah.
If I go into my inspections form, I have one line of code saying private helper class as TSC, that's my initials, the smiley coder, standard form. So I have that line of code, and in the form load event, I have these two lines of code. And in the form's close event, I clean it up. So that's 4 lines of code I need to add, and that will take care of all of the rest for me. I've customized so all of my controls look the same, feel the same, with those 4 lines of code. Sure, there's a lot more lines of code down here, but
But
it
they
affects
were
all of
written
the
down, weren't
controls. Sorry?
they? Yeah, they were written and done there, aren't they? So you write once and you reuse over and over again.
Yeah, exactly. Um, I've even set it up, as I believe, that if you undo your control, it will remember that and remove the dirty color as well. Let's see if I can. So I'll write something here. It's dirty. I'm going to press escape. You see it returns to the original color. So it makes it easy for users to see. Originally, I also had all my forms having if the user writes something, moves off the record, I used to ask them if they wanted to save the record to prevent users making accidental changes. Because sometimes a user would come in and he'd start like, oh, I want to find that thing with the sales, and he'd just write sales, and when that didn't work, he'd remember what he actually had to do. And that first record would sometimes get edited by accident. But if he starts to do it now, at least he'll see the box turn red. He'll see, okay, I did something, I changed something. So it's more visible to him that something is happening, something's being changed.
Sure.
And then, of course, you can use other guys' custom controls, such as the tree view, or you can rewrite, you can try to focus on using rewritable code. I have my picture control down here, which is actually just a subform. It's a couple of subforms, actually, embedded in each other, but they work pretty much by themselves. And I can take this subform for pictures and embed it elsewhere. I have the same subform being used over here. So that's the same subform. I've just taken it out of the original form, open it up as a pop-up form. So I can reuse all of this fancy things it does in regards to adding pictures.
One moment.
Sure. Okay. I'm not going to go into the picture control. I think that's actually something I could probably talk an hour about. It will, as you select an image, it will automatically resize the image. It will cache it on it will save it on the network folder. It will create a bitmap, a report size, and retain the original image. So it saves 3 versions of each image. A reason for this is to make it load faster. I mean, the original image is 5 megabytes, and if you want to pull that down across the network, especially if you have, so this record has 7 pictures. Some of our other records have maybe 30 or more pictures. So you don't want to have the user pulling down 150 megabyte of data just to open the record.
Yeah.
So I did this with creating the thumbs. I think each of these thumbs is maybe 5 kilobytes.
Are they stored as attachments within Access, or are they external to the application?
They're external to the application. No, I would never store them inside Access. That is not a good idea. You might be able to get away with it in SQL Server, but I would never store them inside Access, not the full-size pictures.
No, I meant the thumbs. That's what I was.
The thumbs, you might be able to store the thumbs.
So you store the thumbs externally as well, yeah?
Yeah, they're stored on a network. Again, part of this control, whenever you use a picture, it will collect the picture, put it on a local folder.
Mm-hmm.
So and as you move from one record to the next, it will start by looking for the images in your local folder before going to the network.
Okay.
So they're cached on your computer. And I wrote code also that will clean up the cache if it gets too large, if you run out of disk space.
Okay.
I think it's pretty neat.
Yeah, looks pretty handy.
So back to the presentation. Oh, do you have a question?
No, carry on.
Okay. Please feel free to interrupt if you have any questions. Okay, so the next question, still from Daru. Suppose you see some exotic or even not so exotic applications in the list of references. If you select a reference, it means you can use that application's object model in some way, right? How would you go about figuring out the object model for that application? Any weird examples? I'm going to go through the tree view, for instance. So I go to my references. You can see I have this Microsoft Windows Common Control 6.0. I'll press F2 to open the object browser. You can also find it, I forgot. I always use F2. So I select the library here, and sometimes that can be a bit of a struggle finding out. So the Microsoft Common Control library, okay, that's this one. It might not make sense. Some of them are weirdly named. But as I select this one, I'm now only browsing the object model for that library. And I know I want to use the tree view, so I'll start by typing in tree view. So, okay, this gives me this tree view, and from the library, the tree view class. Clicking on that here, now I can see the members of the tree view. There's the events, there's properties, there's let's see if we can find it, the nodes collection. Property nodes as nodes. As I click that, I can go in and see, okay, this is the nodes. What are the node members of nodes? If I click item, I can see, okay, this is another collection of nodes. So I click that, I'm now at the nodes, and I can see all the properties of the node. I can go through them. You can click back and forth on some of these. And this does give a somewhat idea of what a lot of it does. And sadly, if I press F1, I don't get any useful help file on this. And that is the case for a lot of the things you can reference that you don't get a useful help file. Now for the tree view, if you're a bit tech savvy, you can go and download it off the net, the help file, and that will help you a bit. But even some of these properties are not explained in the help file, and you'd have to go and look at the object model. Or hey, Google it. So question number 3. Another great Office application is OneNote. I love it very much. Is there anything I could do with it from within Access? Any real-world examples? Now, I've used OneNote a bit, but never from within Access. I threw together a very quick sample test OneNote. So I have my declaration here. I dimension O as OneNote 14.application. I set it equal to a new application. And so this, I basically just copy-pasted it from Google. This will call and get the value within this page, save it into the SXML. Then I put that into the clipboard so that I can see it. I'm going to run this now. Okay, and as I look here, my notepad, I'm going to paste it. And so this basically brought up whatever was in that document. It has something to do with my house renovation. I think the pages here, the thing that it collected was a list of the pages I had. LH29, that's my house. I have a page on Access for the MVP Summit. I haven't used it much, the OneNote, so there's not much there. And you could probably continue down using using the code to get or set various bits of text within the OneNote application. But I haven't used it much, so I can't really go into details with it. I don't even know what a use case might be. So if you have a use case, you can text me, and maybe we can find something out together. It might be interesting. I automate Outlook a lot, and I love that, but I haven't tried OneNote. So next question is from Carl. Thank you, Carl. So you're right. I have to say most of my projects are with the old-fashioned desktop databases, and as such, I don't have too much experience with Microsoft Access on the web. Last week, I got a rather weird question or remark translated from Dutch. Apparently, there's a possibility in SharePoint 2013 where Access can be used as a design tool and where Access can generate web forms which can be used in SharePoint 13. End users doesn't need Access anymore as they work fully online. Do you have any experience with this? Looking forward to your comment. So I've played with the Access web apps, and it's correct. You design them in Access, but the end user doesn't need Access. They are stored. The data is stored in SQL Server, and all the form definition, stuff like that, is also stored in SQL Server, but you access it through a SharePoint site, and this is actually one of the huge benefits of creating an online application with Access, is that as they access it through SharePoint, SharePoint will handle all of the validation for you. SharePoint and Microsoft will make sure that only the users who have a password can actually get to it. I mean, I don't know much about web applications, but I've played around with it a bit. Mm-hmm. And the part that has me most concerned is that I don't understand enough about safety for an online web page. How would I make sure that some hacker can't get into my database, can't use some sort of SQL Server injection attack to get through to my database, get the data, destroy the data? Yeah. But, I mean, SharePoint and Microsoft will handle all of this for you. And you might not, I know there's some people who doesn't have the greatest trust in Microsoft, but I do believe when it comes to something like this, they will handle it 1,000 times better than I can. So one of the other things is you have to have, if you want to host it, I believe you can host it on your own SharePoint. If you have an on-prem SharePoint, you can publish it to the application catalog on the SharePoint server. Or if you have an Office 365 account, you can publish your application there. And all of your SharePoint users can get to it and can get a link so they can just log in. They don't need SharePoint, they just need to have a user profile for SharePoint. And they can use your application. But it's a web app. It's they have a lot of cool features, but they don't have Visual Basic. You have to use macros. And macros have gotten a lot more powerful than what they were in 2003. You also have data macros. And one of the things with the web app is as you're sitting in Access and creating your queries, when that query gets saved, it is actually converted on the fly to a view, and that view is on the SQL Server. So you don't have to know any SQL Server. Actually, you don't have access to the SQL Server database itself. You can get a connection, so you can make a read and a read-only connection or a read-write connection. But you cannot go onto the server and write your own view or write your own stored procedure. You can do part of this in Access by creating a query, and that query gets saved as a view, but that is the limitation. Data macros get saved as triggers or stored procedures depending on their content, at least that's how I understood it. So you get to use a lot of the power of SQL Server, but you don't have direct access to it. That's, for me, a bit of a downside. Not that I can think of anything right now where I want to create a stored procedure, and I can't do that in the data macro, but my concern is that at some point down the path of creating my application, I will need to do something on the SQL Server, and now I don't have access to it. The good part is you can have this web app that could collect information by users on their cell phone. They can use it from any PC. It gets rendered in any browser, so that's cool. They don't need access. They can do it on the fly. They can do it from their mobile. But you still get, and this is the big part, you can connect your desktop client application to the SharePoint or their SQL Server. So you can have a hosted SQL Server that your desktop client can connect to. And on your desktop client, you can write all of the same things you would do if you had a MDB file or ACCDB file as a backend. You just store the data in a hosted SQL Server. So you can have users make their data entry, that's fine, but you can use your desktop client to create rich reports for the management. So you kind of get the best of both worlds. One of the downsides is that you still have a way to go on making it more mobile friendly. It is not as responsive as I would like it to be. Say, it doesn't always render well on mobile. Sometimes you have to do a lot of zooming in, zooming out on the mobile. But they're working on that, I know, and it's starting to look good. Carl, does that answer your question? Do you have any follow-up?
Yeah, I'm just informing myself on that aspect, so I have to go in detail later.
Okay. Teresa Henning and George Hepworth, Ben Cloutier, all Access MVPs. They've written a great book called Professional Access Programming, I believe it's called. And they have, I think, 8 or 9 chapters on web app applications, some good samples. That would be a good place to start. You could also go to the Access Teams blog. They have a bit about it as well. So that was the end of the Q&A session. Does anyone have any more questions?
Yeah, if you can give me the reference of the book you just mentioned.
Professional Access 2013 Programming.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you.
I can try to remember to bring it to the Portland conference if you want to have a look at it.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
But it's heavy, so if you don't want to look at it, I don't want to bring it.
Ah, okay. Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay, we'll talk about it. No
Yeah.
Pick one up for $15 for the looks of it. It's not too bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a good book, and there's also a lot of other good stuff in it.
Yeah. All right. Okay, thank you.
Does that cover SQL Server as well, Anders?
Nope.
With SQL Server, I'm referring to, obviously.
I don't recall if they have anything specific on that.
I'll have a look. Yeah, I'll go through the contents on Amazon. I'll have a look. Don't worry about it now.
I think it was, if you can find it.
Yeah, there was one that Juan Soto referred to last month.
Oh, yeah.
It's about 12 years old, I think, now, so obviously it's a bit long in the tooth.
Yeah, I just ordered that. I'll see how it works out. I recently started using SQL Server, and I'm really starting to love the power it gives me. Some of those queries that I gave up getting to run in Access, it's like 0.0 seconds to run it on SQL Server. What?
It's pretty neat once you start getting into it, I must admit.
Yeah, and there's some things that I just couldn't do in Access that I can now do in SQL Server. So definitely starting to like it, but it's also quite a bit of a learning curve for someone who doesn't have an IT background. I've never taken formal IT training. I'm self-taught, just like you, Ray.
Yeah.
So getting to understand SQL Server has been difficult.
Yeah, it's a lot of work, isn't it? But as long as you get some reward out of it at the end, I guess it keeps you going a bit longer.
Okay, so I ended up talking for almost an hour. So I'm not going to start talking about how to track changes in memo fields. I'm just going to really quickly show it as a teaser, and then I'm going to come back to it at another meeting. So basically, if you have memo fields, any part of text, and you want to track the changes, my code will output to a rich text field text like this. Looks like when Word does track changes, what's happening is it's comparing the text up here to the text over here, and then it's outputting this text down here. Actually, the function outputs the rich text over here, but if you put that in a rich text field or rich text control, it looks like this. So where do you want to use something like this? Well, let's see. Imagine you have an application that's tracking information such as requirements. You have a requirement saying the food must be served at 12 every day. So that's your first bit. Look here, this history report I have written just says requirement ID 8 created by this user on this date. It just has the text. But if I go back and change the text, say, okay, we realized it shouldn't be 12, it should be, or it shouldn't be every day, it should be Monday through Friday. I hit save, go look at my history report. My code has done this formatting, showing that every day was deleted and Monday through Friday was added.
That's nice.
And I'm going to go into details on how to achieve that at another meeting, maybe the next meeting, I'm not sure. I haven't decided what the topic should be for the next meeting. So any comments or feedback on today's presentation?
Yeah, that was good. I shall have a play with some of your form resizing and control resizing ideas. See how I get on. See some more rewrites coming up if I get my head around that.
Yeah, the to-do list, add it at the bottom.
Just gets longer every day, I tell you.
Yeah, I know. I have a phrase when people come into my office and ask for a feature. If it's not something I think is great or something I know I can implement really fast, I tell them, okay, that's a great idea. I'm going to put it at the very top of page 3 of my to-do list. So if you haven't subscribed already, I suggest you do it. Then you'll get email notifications about the next meeting. We do not spam, we do not share your email, and we do solemnly promise to keep your email credentials in a locked box under the floorboard. Or something like that. Next meeting, March 4th. Thinking about talking about customizing the form class and the control class in a reusable fashion. Basically going more into detail about what I showed you today. Coloring the form. I might also show something like this. Let's see if I can find it here. So this is a progress form I wrote. All of these controls is a separate class down here. I have a progress form, I have a collection of tasks, and I have tasks. So it works kind of like the tree view I demonstrated. So the progress form has a collection of tasks, and the collection of tasks is, of course, task. Might also show that, go into details about how you can use that, how you can program classes, and some of the things that can be a bit difficult, like how do you set up so that the default property of the progress form is the task. How do I set it up so that I can actually use my progress form without having to dimension it? So why is that important? That's important because I can use it everywhere now. I can use it in all of my forms. I don't have to have a variable to store the progress form in. It's an always instantiated class. And I might talk about that.
Yeah, that was good.
So what comes next? Other topic suggestions. I could talk more about tree view. I could talk about list view. I could talk about code, developer add-ins, reports and report view, or other suggestions. If you have any, speak up now.
Yeah, developer add-ins would be good. I think you've mentioned those before. We haven't actually got around to it yet.
What did you say, developer add-ins?
Yeah, be curious to see a bit more about that.
Yep. So thank you for coming. If you have any other questions, feel free to mail me. If I get questions during the month, I might include them in a small Q&A session each time.
Sure.
I think it's a great way to get more interaction, and I really want to have more discussions during our meetings, so it isn't just me talking for an hour. So as I said, please feel free to interrupt if you have questions.
Yeah, okay.
Well, thanks, Anders. That was great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much.
Have a good evening.
You too.
Thank you.